After fortifying the offensive line, the Bruins have now started to fortify the secondary, rebuilding with two key commits coming earlier today.
You are Locked On UCLA, your daily podcast on the UCLA Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to this edition of the Locked On UCLA Podcast. I'm your host, Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer. Thanks for making this show your first listen each and every day. It's free wherever you get your podcast, and it's available on YouTube. Like, comment, subscribe. Thanks for your support. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season off with a big return. New customers place a $5 bet. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And where we get started today is the fact that the UCLA Bruins, they've been hitting the portal hard, all right? It started off with the announcements, the official confirmations for some new coaches, such as Demetrice Martin, coming in officially announced by the school as the new coach in the secondary, new passing game coordinator defensively. And then also, it looks like Andy Kwan is going to be the UCLA offensive line coach. So those are some big things to start off. We knew some of those. I've talked about some of those, but one in a more official capacity and the other one, not just a rumor. He's a candidate to be that UCLA offensive line coach. And with Martin coming back to UCLA, coached at UCLA from 2012 to 2017, he's already made a remarkable impact on UCLA's recruiting. And we barely started with early signing day. We barely started with the portal. And he already was able to get to flip LaRue Zamorano the third. He came over to UCLA, a big get in a department where UCLA was lacking talent after the two transfers last year, a complete senior-heavy class with the portal this year on defense in the secondary. That's been huge for Martin to come in and get a guy, and then he's gotten a couple of transfer portal commits. So who did UCLA go after? Well, let's go and talk about one of the first. UCLA has Benjamin Perry. All right, one of the two commits here on December the 16th. Perry was a Louisville product. He had met with Scott White, met with Deshaun Foster, met with the staff. And what UCLA is going to get out of this kid is somebody who is probably going to play immediately with the holes UCLA has with graduation, guys declaring for the draft. Most of the guys UCLA had in the last year were almost all out of eligibility in the safeties, the corner spots coming up in this 25 season. So Perry comes in, he's 6'2", 205 pounds. He was a hybrid player in the secondary, and UCLA is trying to get this kid, hey, he's going to play immediately. This was the quote to 24/7 Sports. The Bruins have told him there's an immediate spot for him, which means, hey, all you got to do is come here and you're going to play. But he quote-unquote said, my mindset is to go and earn everything. A former four-star product heading from Chicago, and his Cardinal career ended with 132 total tackles, 74 solo, 11 for loss, 2 sacks, had 8 pass breakups, and a forced fumble. All right, so what we saw UCLA do last year was go after a lot of transfers in the secondary, and actually, I thought, did quite well. There's a lot of plays made, a lot of big plays made, including the one-handed big-time on-the-back pick for a UCLA transfer to earn themselves the win at Nebraska. UCLA, I think, did a pretty good job last season with bringing in some late transfer portal talent to shore up what was a depleted secondary. This year, they got Benjamin Perry from Louisville, who looks to shift over into the Ikaika Malloy defense, give some physicality. He was a hybrid role at Louisville, and that's one commit for the day. Another guy coming over for UCLA is a kid from Federal Way, Washington, a defensive back, 6'1", $180 plus, Andre Jordan Jr., coming away from Oregon State. Played 18 games in his 2 years over at Corvallis. In the most recent season, it says here, reading on the Bruin Blitz, had 27 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, 4 pass breakups, including 3 broken up in a game against UNLV when they're targeting his way. Was a 3-star transfer recruit, just like he was a 3-star recruit coming out of the class of 23. And when he announced, already talked about his relationship with the new passing game coordinator, new secondary coach in Coach Martin, who UCLA just officially hired earlier in the day, officially announced his hiring. Deshaun Foster hasn't been, prior to the official of everything, has not been on the record to comment on him. And now here is UCLA getting a 6'1" corner, a couple years of eligibility after 2 seasons at Oregon State. So UCLA is getting immediate plug and play, possibly the same in Jordan with another year of eligibility off of him, and getting Zamorano coming in late. UCLA is both getting the plug-and-play talent while also maintaining a growth towards the future. Now, it's tough to build and grow in the future, as we've seen more and more college coaches complain how tough it is to build for the future, build for your program, getting 4 guys. But in some positions, you hope you can find somebody and keep him. And maybe with these relationships, with Martin coming back to UCLA, a known recruiter, bringing his commit from Michigan State all the way over to UCLA, getting some guys and making work happen in the portal unofficially, UCLA can slightly build for the future while getting some talent, stockpiling some talent in the secondary, and knowing, hey, we got some guys that can play right away and compete for a defense, and a defensive coordinator that has proven himself over the last season that he knows what to do. As long as he doesn't get poached and get taken away, then UCLA should be good to go. All right. Meanwhile, somebody who UCLA is not going to get, all right, this was somebody I talked about the Bruins were in on. He was supposed to take an official visit. Sean Parker, Washington State. So the Bruins have gone after an ACC team. They went after a Pac-12 team, another former Pac-12 rival, Washington State. They're starting running back in Sean Parker. Officially, John Mateer, the quarterback, just hit the portal. But now the running back, who is one of the top-tier running backs in the transfer portal right now, you've got Parker canceling his visits. He was supposed to go to UCLA or USC for SoCal recruiting official visits, canceled those. He's going to go to either Utah or Arizona at this stage of the recruiting process. So maybe UCLA shifts their focus onto the quarterback, John Mateer, who just threw his name into the portal. All right. We could talk a little bit more officially into UCLA attempting to go after Mateer. I'm assuming Mateer has had his agents, had his communications. He probably has an idea of where he wants to go if UCLA's even contacted him. But he's in the portal. The running back, Parker, is looking maybe like a Utah commit, maybe leaning Arizona, but the SoCal schools are out. All right. And I'm not sure if UCLA wanted this kid necessarily or needed him, but he was a prized West Coast possession in the transfer portal at the running back position. And hey, you take a swing, you go after him. What UCLA needs? Anything and everything on defense. What UCLA needs, as you've all said it, we all know it, a lot more and a lot better offensive linemen to continue and come through and be developed within the program and come through the transfer portal. And if UCLA really thinks they need a quarterback, then they can go after the John Mateers. They can go after guys like Malik Murphy, who's still technically out there as of this moment. UCLA hasn't really contacted him, but that's the case from what I've seen and what I've read. And then what I think is the best fit, Fernando Mendoza, the Cal quarterback who has put himself in the portal, seems like a good fit. UCLA had already been reported at going big on trying to get that former Golden Bear quarterback and bringing him to UCLA. All right, so that's all the things. They got 2 DBs, no official visit for the running back who's going to go elsewhere on the West Coast, go to the Big 12. Now the Bruins are slowly making some moves. They've got their 3rd and 4th commits in the portal, more to come. And hopefully these guys in the secondary can be just as impactful as the guys this year were on a pretty successful UCLA defense. All right. They made some plays, got some picks, and the Bruins were able to uphold the legacy of the 23 defense with a somewhat stable 24 defense that didn't have a lot of pass rush this year. And they were just torched on some games, but I thought they had a respectable season given the circumstances and everything moving through. All right. Next, we're going to talk about UCLA men's basketball. Hey, what are they doing? What are they doing? They got some respect on their name. Are they closing in on top 15? All that because of a late run against Arizona? Absolutely. We'll talk about them next on Locked On UCLA. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5. You get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Cruising on into the second segment, we're talking UCLA men's basketball. The Bruins coming off that big comeback victory over Arizona where they looked really good in moments, really, really bad in the middle portion of the game, and a strong second part of the second half where UCLA looked good. So if you think about it, the Bruins played really good for 20 minutes and downright awful for the middle 20. And when UCLA looked unbeatable, they were scoring, hitting threes, making great defensive stops, forcing Arizona misses for a team that, as I said, didn't shoot that well, but could score a lot of points. And I thought the Bruins would hold them to close to less than 60, I thought, coming in. And boy, did they do that, including a nearly 9-minute stretch without points and field goals to end the game, where the Bruins just raced right through the Wildcat attempts to win the game and just dominated. What a stunning turn of events when the Wildcats couldn't hit a single shot from the field down the final 9 minutes. Absolutely stunning turnaround. The Bruins have jumped up to 18th in the AP Top 25 poll, which means, ironically, they're just ahead of Mick Cronin's old home in Cincinnati. The Bearcats are 8-1. The Bruins 9-1. They're right behind Mississippi, who's 9-1. And now this is where UCLA, with the chance to beat North Carolina, can start leapfrogging these teams. They do a Prairie View A&M. UCLA is a massive favorite over Prairie View A&M, who did give Mississippi State earlier this year a run for their money at Mississippi State. I think it was a 91-84 game. So anything can happen. If they put it together and the Bruins fall asleep after a big-time win against Arizona in what should be a sleepy Pauley Pavilion, I hate to say it, but it will be, in a Tuesday 6:30 in Westwood, tough to get to. Everybody's doing their Christmas shopping, holiday shopping, Christmas lights, everything. It's probably going to be a little bit empty against a 1-9 team, as long as the Bruins don't avoid any look-ahead factor prior to their trip to New York. If the Bruins can get 2 wins this week, that would put them at 11-1. Here are the teams ahead of them. They got Mississippi, an 8-3 Purdue team, a 6-3 Houston team, one of the few unbeatens left, Oklahoma 10-0, and then UCLA eventually going to play Gonzaga, who's 13th at 7-3. Unfortunate that Gonzaga couldn't beat UConn when they were down. UConn now in the upswing. And when they choked against Kentucky, it means UCLA's game is not going to be against the top 5 Gonzaga team. It's going to be against the top 15 Gonzaga team. All right, so the Bruins, now with a win against a top 10 Oregon team on the road, an Arizona team who's flirting with being on the bubble by the time the season comes to an end. Chance to build a resume with some more wins. I think with what they've done so far, they've become pretty much a lock, barring an absolute disaster, an absolute collapse in the second half of the season, to make the tournament, which we've seen in the end of that Final Four season. The UCLA Bruins did their best to blow their chance to the tournament that bubble year in 2021 and barely made it in as one of the last 4 teams in. Eventually made it to the Final Four, yet they still had to go through the first 4. So we have seen sometimes Mick Cronin teams at UCLA go through cold stretches, absolutely cold stretches. And this team we've seen has also played one of the worst games ever, where they had 20-plus turnovers, got beat by New Mexico, are very vulnerable to a team with size, but as they're able to handle Arizona without their best big man, mind you, but handle Arizona on a quote-unquote neutral floor road game in Arizona at Phoenix, the Bruins came away with an absolutely huge dub. But it still points to the fact that this team needs their bigs to develop. Adai Mara, can he get more time on the floor? Can he develop defensively and be strong enough offensively, whether it's on the glass, posting up, to give UCLA at least 3 to 4 easy buckets when he's in the game throughout the game? All right, 3 to 4 easy buckets, because you've got difference, right? You got tall, lanky, the super size that most teams don't necessarily have in Mara, 7'3" Spaniard who's slowly getting stronger. And then you pair that with an uber athletic William Kyle, and you bring one more of a defensive threat and one more of the offensive threat. If you could find a way to put them and mold them into one player, cool. But UCLA gets that in spurts with one of them on the floor and the court at a time. Can't have them on the court at the same time. That would just take too much defense, too much offense away from UCLA. If one of them can develop, or they can have a good role-playing opportunity where they can have a good 10 minutes here, good 10 minutes here from both Mara and Kyle, that can make sure UCLA is not vulnerable to a team that has lots of size. A team that has lots of size is going to hurt UCLA as much as New Mexico did against the Bruins. Arizona's limited size almost hurt UCLA. Oregon's size, that's the weakness. That is how you attack UCLA, the paint. Outscoring them in the paint, out-rebounding UCLA by 10. If Eric Daly wasn't on the floor, even though he was plus 17 when he was in the game for UCLA against Arizona, If he's not on the floor, you lose more athleticism, more size. The Bruins have to develop consistent scoring in the paint and more production from their big men. And I'm leaving Bilodeau out of that because Bilodeau is a little different. Daly obviously is a guard that can play a four. Bilodeau, keep him out of that. This is focused on those two guys that when they're in the game are legitimate fives, Kyle and Mara. Now, if one of them can be real good, that'll help UCLA immensely in their road to a Big Ten journey. And again, if UCLA wins these next couple of games, they can find a way to get into the top 10. To the end of the new year, you win these games? Absolutely. Because all these teams in the teens leading up to the top 10 have 2-3 losses, other than Oklahoma, which just means most of these pollsters don't believe Oklahoma is legitimate yet as a 10-0 team in the 14th spot. You got Florida, who's 10-0 at 7, and then you've got Tennessee, who's 10-0 in number 1. So you've got 3 unbeaten teams in the SEC. We'll see how legitimate it all is, considering everybody believes Auburn is the best team at this moment at 9-1 in the second spot. It seems like between Kentucky and Duke, both those teams have done a number on hurting UCLA's big-time resume opportunities, right? Beating North Carolina, beating Arizona on the road. Those have been detrimental to UCLA jumping up and getting 1 seed love by beating Arizona, considering Arizona is now under 500, by hopefully beating North Carolina this weekend on the East Coast. North Carolina team that's got, 4+ losses, 4 losses coming in, all against those big name opponents. They haven't been able to beat any of them basically right now. The story coming out of North Carolina is the fact they got Bill Belichick as their football coach. Who would have thought that in the beginning, slowly easing its way into the middle of the college basketball season? Nobody. Absolutely nobody. So the Bruins getting legit? Absolutely. They're getting the love. This is a team that I believe, with the heart, the character, the strong defensive metrics, I've been high on this team all the way to making a third weekend appearance in March Madness, making it to a Final Four-like team. But they are very vulnerable with size. And Cronin is going to have to spend the whole season building that resume, getting a bracket that avoids a team with some size, right? Because say UCLA has one of the best seeds. Say they make it to a 1 or a 2 seed. They're dangerous, but they can also be vulnerable to an 8 seed or a 4 seed that's got a 7-footer, a 7-1 guy, 6'10", that's super dominant and can score in the post and rebound, post 2015 night. That's where UCLA is vulnerable to losing early in the tournament, losing in Big Ten play throughout this season. But until then, the Bruins, really strong win against Arizona. The moxie displayed to come back and beat those Wildcats, just to shove it to the Arizona fans who are probably talking so much trash in the arena, talking so much trash after they won the Pac-12 tournament, did nothing, or won the Pac-12, I should say, regular season championship last year, did nothing with it. They are having an absolute down year. And until Caleb Love figures it out, and with Krivos out for an indefinite amount of time, they might be on the road to an under 500 start to their non-conference season. Meanwhile, as UCLA fans, we'll be like, year to year, we knew this one was going to be a lot better. 9-1 start. I think they should be higher than 18th, considering they beat a top 10 Oregon team who's got the same amount of losses, but the Ducks have the resume and the Bruins got to go get one. So let's get hyped. Speaking about big resume, the UCLA women next season are going to have one. They have announced a new tournament. We're going to talk about what the women are going to be in next Thanksgiving-ish year. And it's a big one. It's an absolute big announcement. Here, we'll talk about it next. It's that time of year. The college football playoff is back. And with the newly expanded 12-team format, it's guaranteed to be bigger and better than ever. Bring you all the hard-hitting and high-flying excitement that you love. TNT Sports coverage of the college football playoff begins December 21st, starting with the college football playoff kickoff show presented by AT&T at 11 a.m. Eastern, leading to our first matchup, the Southern Methodist University Mustangs battling the Penn State Nittany Lions at noon. Then the Clemson Tigers look to upset the Texas Longhorns in a showdown at 4 p.m. Eastern. Don't miss a moment of the action. Watch the college football playoff presented by Allstate live on TNT, True TV, TBS, and Max. All right, coming off the heels of Corey Close and UCLA going to Long Beach, winning at the Pyramid, I think, slowly solidifying themselves, cementing themselves as the clear-cut number one. South Carolina is already back to being number 2 in the country. And what I think is absolutely stupid, is in the top 25 poll that they have a first-place vote. Now, they've been crushing teams. All right? But the fact that they have a first-place vote, being the number 2 team that got absolutely blasted by Corey Close's Bruins, I think is ridiculous. Now, the third-ranked Notre Dame Fighting Irish, who have so many signature wins so far, despite them having multiple losses, them having a first-place vote, I can understand that more. But South Carolina having gone to UCLA and getting blasted, what? That makes no sense. Okay, besides the point, UCLA and South Carolina probably going to tangle, I would think, at some point once again this year in the tournament if they go very far. Those are clearly 2 of the best teams. South Carolina has destroyed everybody in their path, including TCU. UCLA's biggest game was South Carolina, and Notre Dame has beaten every other good team other than those 2 teams. So this is what the big announcement is that was brought in earlier today. Reading this from On3, it's a Players Era women's basketball tournament. They just did this. Oregon won the men's version of this, the first one. It's an NIL-driven women's basketball tournament, okay? So each program is going to engage in at least $1 million of NIL activities for Player Era and the sponsors outside the program, which means all the programs are going to get $1 million in NIL just for participating. Man, that's a lot of tournament dough. I guess I didn't read too much about the men's one, but the fact that just from participating, Corey Close and her team's going to get $1 million. They're going to go get $1 million right there just for participating. And all these players are coming back. So UCLA, with the talent coming in, got Ledger Walker next year. If the Bruins stay healthy and they do the dominant things they're expected to do this year, at the worst, hopefully a Final Four, at the very worst, for the unbeaten, unquestioned number 1 team in the country, they can be trying to go back-to-back next year, or some revenge of some sort. They're going to have a lot of players back. A lot of reasons come back when you see that tournament that's going to have close to $1 million funneled into the UCLA women's basketball NIL fund. Each program, and who are these programs? It's going to be UCLA, Duke, Texas. All right. So Duke they've done pretty good things, still building that resume. Texas, who was as high as number 4 earlier this year, and South Carolina. So next year, UCLA in the Players Era Women's Championship in 2025, South Carolina, Duke, UCLA, and Texas. And they're all going to play each of those teams. Teams that are all like top 10 worthy. They're going to go play on a neutral court, make $1 million, and then we're not going to get to go see UCLA at Columbia, which they already did a few years ago. We're not going to see South Carolina come to LA, not come to Westwood. But this is going to be a huge, huge tournament. And I think the championship, it's not going to be a bracketed one. It's supposed to be they play all 3 times, and depending on the head-to-head format, depending on tiebreakers, it's less of a tournament and more of a, instead of UCLA going to Hawaii and winning 3 cupcakes, they're going to schedule those cupcakes early, I would assume, next year in the 25-26 schedule. And then, wow, you're going to have another elite non-conference schedule. 3 of your toughest games coming all in like a span of a few days around the Thanksgiving era tournament. So it's a round-robin tournament. It's going to happen over 3 days, coincide with the men's tournament. The round-robin format is going to give each team 3 marquee matchups, the overall champion determined by a head-to-head record, series of tiebreakers. The tournament's less important. It's more the fact that the champion in this tournament is less important, especially since it's less of a bracketed format, although they'll play everybody, so just 4 teams, and they'll all be loaded matchups. And I wonder if it's going to be back-to-back day off and then a championship. I think that's how the Players' Championship was played this year. I don't think they could have all these teams play 3 days in a row like UCLA did at Hawaii, and we saw how much they struggled. Playing 3 days in a row, that's not something you always do outside of conference tournament play. Not really something you do in college basketball, other than Thanksgiving/Christmas tournaments, or in the conference tournament scenario where you have teams playing for their lives, winning 3 days in a row, 4 days in a row, doing crazy things. So I would think it'd be 3 days in a row over 3 days. UCLA is going to have a loaded schedule next year. I think they should be unanimous number one. The fact that South Carolina even got a vote for first place is ludicrous. Notre Dame, a little understandable until the Bruins start beating some other teams. Because they're clear-cut number one. Corey Close, once again, the all-time winningest head coach in women's basketball history at UCLA with her win against Long Beach State. Big time. Big time. And that was without Gardner playing in that game. That was with Angela Dugalich having her best performance as a Bruin with 22 points, looking fantastic. So I think this team is looking as strong as ever. We're going to see how USC fares against UConn and what that means for the Big Ten, or if UCLA is just that much better, just a tier above. Hopefully that's what they are this year. But until then, we got to get your hands up, Bruins fans. 8 clap time, baby. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. UCLA, fight, fight, fight. This has been Locked on UCLA. Zach signing off. Go Bruins.